Hey lads, welcome to another commentary video. This time we're in Court of Stars, which I think is the last dungeon that I haven't done one of those videos on. So this is what we're going to do right now. To start off, keep in mind that in this dungeon I am running a little bit of a different talents that what you've probably seen in some of my other videos. So I've taken Cloudburst Totem, I've taken Downpour, but that's obviously not necessary. You can still run the Healing Stream Totem and the build that I've shown in some of my other videos. I just decided to experiment a little bit over here, so just keep that in mind. And what we will be going through is going to be a +21 Tyrannical key, which means that the bosses are going to be relatively hard, especially the second one, but I will also try and go through some of the mechanics that you have in the trash. Unfortunately, this dungeon starts with this long let's call it RP, where we just ride the boats, so 1 minute of the timer is automatically wasted, but in general this is not a very long dungeon anyway, so nothing to be worried about. The timer is usually quite fine if you play well. Alright, so once you land here, you want to mount up, and there is a mob that's walking out from that door. I just targeted that on my screen. Usually you want to skip that. In this case, the rogue is going to sap it. If you have a demon hunter, they can imprison it. Even monks can try to Ring of Peace and paralyze it, which is harder. But in case you don't have any kind of CC, you can actually aggro this mob and just drag it up the stairs with you into the first pool, which is going to be out of this door. Now, one thing that you want to do is the sentries, which are in green, nameplates here, you want to stun those before they sound the alarm, because they're going to bring an extra mob, and that extra mob does not count your trash percentage, so keep that in mind. The scary thing for the healer here is that mana saber that you saw, it basically jumps to people, and in this case there were two. One of them jumped on me, one of them jumped on the warlock, but keep in mind that if both jump on the same person, they can basically almost one-shot it. They leave this nasty dot as well, so you want to dispel that, especially if two of those go into the same person. On high fortified keys, they can probably even one-shot someone if he's more squishy. Then we have the guards and the constructs. Both of those have casts which are pretty much heal. The suppress from the construct is a channel that you can either interrupt, or you can also dispel the person that's getting channeled, so keep that in mind. And the construct also has a frontal that should be avoided. The torch that my tank got comes from the sentry, so keep in mind that this actually hits pretty hard on a 45 week, and if somebody aggros other than the tag, you should be ready to heal them because you cannot dispel that. We do an extra pull here with down the docks pretty much, so be careful, because I didn't say this, but the guards, they have this quelling strike, which is also a frontal cone. So if you stay in front, you easily die, so keep that in mind. And the Nightfallen Orb from the Arcanist is just AoE, but if you don't pull the docks patrol here, the docks pack, you will probably not have to fight these mobs anyway. All of these are stunnable, apart of course from the construct, so keep that in mind. If you're melee, avoid the frontals. Try to interrupt as many of those fortification and I don't remember the name of the construct cast that's also healing, but obviously that will speed up your run because the mobs will not be healing. The beacon that I just disabled, you want to disable all 5 before pulling the boss, or the fight is going to be harder because the boss is going to actually call extra mobs, so make sure to disable those. A construct here, we're pulling this separately because it's bolstering week, but usually you can drag this to the next few packs. The rogue blinded the sentry because we don't want that running to the beacon yet. And the mana worms on the left, if you pull those, you just AoE them down, but be careful because when they die, they leave a huge patch on the ground, which explodes, so if you're inside, you get one-shotted. Now, the pack that we pulled from the right, we do have some mana worms. You see that I got 2 of the sabers jumping on me, so I'm dispelling myself as quickly as possible. 2 things to say, actually. The sabers, if they jump, they do a small AoE, and they can actually hit more than one person. Also, it's kind of like a projectile. The jump is a projectile, so you can dodge it, but it's very hard to dodge. Basically, you have to be in a ghost woo form, and you have to be running sideways in the time that the saber jumps, so that you're out of the spot where it's going to land. So you can try to dodge, especially on 45 weeks when they hit much harder. But other than that, just be prepared to dispel if somebody gets 2 of those. We have 2 sentries here, so I'm healing my tank. Because he had 2 torches. My rogue got hit by the frontal of the guard. The warlock had the saber debuff, right? So all of those things, the saber now jumps on the warlock again. So luckily my cooldown of the dispel is back. But one thing that you can do is you can cap totem these packs, because you will stun the frontals, you will stun the saber, so it won't be able to jump. And if it's a bit of a hectic pool with more mobs, which happens especially on Tyrannical weeks, make sure to stay out of the way of the guards, so you don't get one-shotted by the frontal, which is the Quelling Strike. Alright, so one more pull before the boss. We have another construct and a guard. The small bound energy thing, I think it does a cast or something that does charge blast, as you can see. I think that's a frontal as well, so basically stay away from these mobs if you're ranged, otherwise make sure you're behind them. Now, this room here has 3 pillars that you need to disable. All of them you can do without pulling mobs, because there's patrols that go around the pillars, but once they go away from the beacons, you can disable them without pulling the patrol. And there is a flask in the middle, which I'm not going to do this time, but you need an alchemist to basically poison the flask, and the boss fight went at 25%. It's very important to do that, because especially on Tyrannical, 25% is going to take you a while to DPS down. So I think the warlock is going to run to the middle here and poison the flask. Basically, you click on the flask, there's a little dialogue thing that you can click, and then it will just say the flask is poisoned. And other than that, just make sure that the patrols that are walking around are away from the beacons once you go and click them. So I think the rogue got the beacon on the left, the warrior got the beacon on the right, and if I'm correct, I'm going to run to the far beacon at the bottom of your screens. Just make sure you don't aggro the boss. And there's also a patrol to the stairs here. Make sure that's up there so you don't aggro it. And once you disable all the beacons, you can pull the boss. The beacons the boss is going to do sound the alarm or something during the fight, and if the beacons are not disabled, he's going to summon extra mobs for each one of them. You can sometimes leave one of the beacons up and just CC the mob, but that requires a little bit more coordination, a little bit more control, so just disable them and don't worry about it. We lost the boss. Usually you lose the boss because there's nothing better to lust in before that. And this boss is pretty simple. So watch the ground at all times, because he does those cones that you saw, and he does a double cone, but that's always on melee. So if you stay on range, that's a double cone, as you can see. If you stay on ranged, you won't have to bother about this, but the other cone, which is kind of like a frontal that comes out of these orbs, you just have to dodge. That one-shots you, so make sure you are out of this. And here's the signal beacon, but since we disabled all the beacons, there's nothing to do. Arcane Lockdown is the other thing to worry about. So this puts a debuff on you with 3 stacks. If you jump, you remove a stack, but that slows you down. I usually dispel myself, but you can also jump, it's just slower. You have to do that as soon as possible first, because if there is a beacon on you, one of the orbs, it will be harder for you to move. And also it does a ticking damage, so make sure to dispel yourself. And in some cases, especially when I play my paladin, sometimes I know that one of my melee is probably not quick enough to dispel it, or they don't jump at all, so sometimes I would just free them or dispel them and jump instead. Other than that, you just DPS. The tank might be taking a little bit of damage every now and then. You might need to throw a small heal to people after the Arcane Lockdown, because they will take a damage from some of the ticks while they're jumping. But other than that, it's, as I said, it's a pretty simple fight, nothing to worry about. Of course, if somebody gets hit by the frontals, like the tank did just right now, or the melee, they die, right? This is it. Luckily, the boss was casting something, one of the orbs, so we managed to res the tank here, but as you saw, if the tank gets one-shotted, what's left for somebody else in your party? So make sure you're watching this. The only way that you do not kill this boss, if one or even more people get hit by those frontals, which leaves less people in the fight. So even if you kill it, it will take longer. And of course, if it's the tank, it might be game over as well. So the boss is almost at 25%. At 25%, he actually runs to the potion there. At this point, the fight is over. You don't need to DPS him anymore. Once he drinks the poison, he's dead. And in here, run to the middle of the stairs. Look where I'm running, because there's patrols on both sides. And if you aggro them, it will make this pull very, very hard. Other than that, there's a construct here. You can just drag it on the way through those stairs. I think in this case, the paladin just stayed there and tanked it. But usually you just DPS this while you run through those buildings, and this way you save a little bit of time. Not sure why he didn't drag it with us in this case, but I guess one more thing to mention here, it's a volcanic week, so especially on the first boss, be careful, because if a volcano spawns on top of you and you get hit and there is an orb that you have to dodge at the same time, you might die, right? So watch your feet at all times, simply because it could kill you, and that stands true basically for every boss in here, but also in other dungeons as well. So don't underestimate the affix, because in some cases it could actually kill you. Alright, now to the fun part. So, the most scary thing here is the little imps, because they'll start casting and they hit. Even on Tyrannical, they hit for a lot. On Fortified, they can basically one-shot people. So what you want to do is you want to stun them. Now, in here, I think I saved my stun. Although they were casting, as you can see. You can interrupt them, but usually there's a lot of them. I saved my stun for the next pack, but make sure there's enough CC for those imps. Otherwise, you know, they'll just kill people. Now, the mobs here, the Mistress has a debuff that you can dispel. You can let this cast off, interrupt the Inquisitor. So the Inquisitor does 2 AoEs. One is the Searing Glare, which is interruptible. The other one is Eye of the Storm, which is not interruptible, but you can stun it. So make sure you have a stun for that. There's 2 patrols of imps on each side of this bridge. So right now we're going to pull the imps. I am saving my cap totem. Make sure you have a cap totem for these, and I also have a backup in the case cast start to go off with my War Stomp. In this case, I think we have, yeah, as you can see, somebody just got one-shotted by the imps, right? Those fireballs hit for a lot, even on Tyrannical, so make sure you don't ninja pull those imps in any case, and make sure to interrupt and stun them. Now, there's a construct here, another Inquisitor, so the Searing Glare went off. As you can see, few people took damage. Eye of the Storm, luckily, is stunned, and the little hounds, they will just jump to somebody and leave a pile of dust, I guess, on the ground. Just move out of that. Usually doesn't do too much damage, so that's not something to be scared of. There are also different items that you can click here. The Shaman one is right now behind me. It was not up in this run of the dungeon, but there's a little rune on the ground that you can click, and I think it just gives speed or something, but the different things give different buffs. Some will give you haste, some will give you crit. There's right now a green orb on the right, which is the Warlock thing. We're going to pull that, but now, scary thing, the imps again. I have my cap totem. Somehow we managed to interrupt, or they just all went on the tank, right? So that was lucky because he aggroed them, and we didn't get aggro on any of them. But I was a little late here on the cap totem. Be prepared, because whenever they pull those, it could get very scary. The guy that's lying on the bag in yellow next to the door is actually the healer thing that you can click. Obviously, that might not be up every time, but if you click it, you're going to pull one of the mini bosses that I'm going to talk in just a second. The Mistress also has a frontal that just hit my tank, the slash or whatever the name is. So be prepared, because that hits very, very hard, and it can drop your tank very low. So if you see the Mistress casting it, be prepared to heal your tank. The Shadow Slash, that's it. As you can see, my tank got down to like 10%. So be prepared to top your tank off if you're fighting one of these. Alright, so that's all the trash here. We're going to pull this later to get the orb for the Warlock. And what you want to do in this area, you want to pull the Enforcers. The Enforcers spawn on different positions around this whole courtyard. and you just DPS those down, and when the fell detonation happens, you want to line of sight that, because otherwise it hits for a lot, right? It hits very, very hard, and it leaves a dot on you, so on fortified, it could actually one-shot you. So basically, there's not much to heal, just DPS, and then while you're behind the pillar, you can, I guess, cast your Acid Rain and do damage this way, right? But make sure you line of sight and you avoid those detonations. If somebody gets hit and they live, be prepared to heal them, because the debuff is like, the dot is like, I don't know, 6, 7, 8 seconds. So you need to pump a lot of heals into them in order for them to live. Nobody got hit, so when you kill one of the enforcers, you pull one of the 3 mini bosses, which you need to kill before the boss, because the boss is buffed to infinity before that. So the first one does the Scream of Pain and the Whirling Blades. So the Blades is just AoE on the ground, and the Scream hits everybody and interrupts. So first, make sure you're not casting while the Scream is going off, and as soon as it goes off, make sure you are healing everybody up. It's not important to top them immediately, but you need to do that before the next scream. Now, the next Enforcer already spawned, and it's behind us, and now we're going to pull it into this pack. We were aware of this, luckily, but keep in mind, if you pull this, you will need to line of sight once it starts casting the fell detonation, right? You still need to do that, although you're fighting the other mob, and do all the other mechanics. And be careful, because sometimes it spawns far away, so you don't have to worry about it. But sometimes it's going to spawn on top of you, and if you're not aware of it, you can just wipe. Because even if the tank gets aggro, if the fell detonation goes off and people are not aware and they don't hide, then basically you just die. Now, I think I got hit here. Yeah, as you can see, it hit me for about 50% of my health bar, and then I need to basically top myself off and keep healing myself for the dot. Luckily, this is not a 4-5 weeks, so that's not so scary, but be prepared for situations like that. And it's easy to line of sight here, but if you're on the other side and there is no pillars nearby, you just have to find a spot near the walls or next to a door or something. Sometimes it's a little bit inconvenient, but it is what it is. You also need to be at 95% after the before you pull the boss. I'll mention that in a second. This mini boss has the disintegration. You have to interrupt that. That's the only thing to interrupt. That's fine. But it's a channel and it does a lot of damage. And then he's going to pick 2 people and put that debuff on them, which is a ticking bomb, which explodes. You can dispel one of them, heal people up, and then the other one is going to explode by itself. The Impending Doom is the name, because your dispel won't be up in any case. So make sure to interrupt, make sure to heal people that got hit by the initial dispel, and then be prepared to heal a little bit more once the second dispel goes off. Those actually hit very, very hard on fortified weeks. I guess this is considered to be a fortified mob, and especially in this case, as you can see, my warlock got hit by the Impending Doom, and we didn't kick fast enough the channel, so he was taking basically a lot of damage. You need to be prepared to heal those. And now we're not going to kill the last Enforcer, which is in front of us right now, but because we have one of these things, as you can see, I can just click on it, and it will pull the mini boss. Now, there's different things that different classes can click, right? Some of them will give you a buff, some of them will pull a mini boss. In this case, this one pulls a mini boss, so we don't have to kill the last Enforcer. We just need to be aware that it's behind us right now. You can see a yellow dot on my map, which indicates where the next Enforcer is. So we need to be aware and not pull that, so that we don't have to fight it on top of this. And once you pull the 3 little mini bosses, you're done. Right, you don't need to kill any more Enforcers, because they will give you count, but they're not very effective in this regard. So if you don't need a mini boss, usually you don't want to fight those. This guy is pretty simple. He has this jump, which usually is targeted on a ranged player, so the ranged players can actually stay close to melee, so that the melee doesn't have to run far in order to hit the boss. And the shockwave is something is going to cast regularly. This is just the frontal, it will one-shot you, so make sure you are behind the mob, especially when he jumps. Look at the direction where he's facing. As you can see, I'm just making sure that I'm behind it, because if you get hit, you will die. If somebody dies, by the way, up to the top left hand side of your screens, there's a door, and this is where you spawn, right? So make sure to release if you're able to. Of course, if the bridge is cleared, etc., don't wait for a rest in that case, because it's easy to get back in here. And now we're going to pull those 2 extra mobs. This is going to actually get us to the 95% mark, and the Warlock is getting that orb, which I think is, I'm not sure, it's some kind of a buff. It's either haste or crit, but, you know, it's free, so if you can take it, then take it. There's a Mistress here, so watch for your tank, and there's the Hound that jumps around, but that's pretty much it. It's an easy pull, and you usually combine this with other pulls. There's a patrol here to the left. Sometimes you pull the patrol if you need the trash count. Right now we're just making sure we don't pull it, and we go into this little area where we're going to fight the second boss. On Hierarchies in Tyrannical, this is actually the hardest boss in here, because it will do the burning intensity, which makes the boss do more and more and more damage. So the longer you fight the boss, the harder it becomes, especially on Tyrannical. Obviously, that's going to be very scary. So first, watch for Volcanic, because if you get hit by the stuff that was just summoned on the ground, you'll die. Right. There is a Withering Soul, which you need to debuff, because that puts a curse on everybody. You won't be able to dispel everybody, so it could be a wipe, right? And then the Inferno Eruptions are the little fire patches on the ground, which summon the imps. You want to AoE down the imps, you want to stun them, make sure they don't cast. They usually die pretty quickly, but if they start casting, it's also a wipe. And then, obviously, they leave the fire on the ground that you need to move away from. So here you want to stack, so the imps are spawned close to each other, and it's easy to AoE. And your job as a healer is basically just to keep healing, because there is an AoE damage that happens all the time, and also it's getting more and more, right? Because of the burning intensity, it will just get worse. So you can help with interrupts, you can help with cap totem on the imps, but other than that, save your big CDs for later in the fight, because the damage is going to be ticking for more and more. Make sure you move out of this. I almost got hit here, but luckily I lived. And basically at some point I popped my Ascendance. A little bit later on I popped my Healing Tide Totem, and then I also got the Ancestral Guidance. Right now I only have Link left. Sometimes I would say use the Link early and save the Ascendance and the Ancestral Guidance cooldowns for later. In this case, I didn't do it, for the reason that once you drop the Link, basically everybody drops low, as you can see, right? So I'm spamming heals on myself to top everybody up, but I kind of like the Link for earlier and the other cooldowns for later. But just be aware what cooldowns you have. It's obviously you want the Lust for this boss, especially in Tyrannical, and also make sure that if possible, of course, that all of your cooldowns are up, because you're going to need all of them on Hierarchies to basically just heal through this. Now, here there's a game where you need to talk to one of these people and recognize them as the spy. If you played perfect up until this point, you have to make sure that somebody fails the first guess. Otherwise, the Warlock just did that, by the way. You see the little debuff on his icon. If you don't do that, you're going to get a longer RP on the last boss. Other than that, there's 5 mobs which are marked with yellow on your map, and you want to talk to them, and they'll give you hints on how the spy looks. So in this case, it's a female, it's a cape, it wears a book, so I just took a guess here because we didn't have all the clues, but I was correct. If you get a mistake, you're ported outside and you cannot make another guess for 30 seconds. Once you get the spy, he's going to run to one of the 2 rooms upstairs, to the left or to the right, and then he's going to transform into a dreadlord, and you have to basically fight him. On fortified weeks, it could do a little bit more damage, but there's nothing to be scared of. Here's the dreadlord. Make sure you top everyone off. Then basically you just DPS. It does hit the tank a little bit, especially when he casts the claws. And then the other thing he does is the Shadow Bolt Volley. That hits everybody. It's not urgent to heal everybody up, but you need to heal them. The Vampiric Claws is the thing that hits the tank, right? So be prepared to heal the tank there. And make sure you top everybody up from the Shadow Bolt Volley. in case, because she's going to cast it again, right? So it doesn't have to be immediate, but you do have to heal a little bit here. The other thing to do, apart from clearing Thundering, is interrupt the bat. The bat you need to like stun. Otherwise, if you just push it around, etc., if that hypnosis goes off, he mind controls someone and he just kills them, right? So what you can do here is Cap Totem. Obviously, you can just use that once during this fight. War Stomp if you're a Tauren. And if you use Hex, you can actually Hex the bat. In this case, I don't run Hex anymore because I don't run the Totem Talents on the left-hand side. And he mind controls me here, but I think they interrupted, so that's fine. Once you kill the Dreadlord, you have to click a pair of keys that he drops, and then you run to the last boss. Last boss could also be relatively hard, but it's kind of like scripted. So once you know what's going to happen, it's relatively easy to heal and to get thread. Now, I'm not going to talk much about baiting the charges, but it's nice if you have somebody baiting because they'll stack them on top of each other. But let's go through the fight now. So the first thing that he's going to do is he's going to do the Blade Surge, which targets somebody far from him. He targets them, rushes to there, and leaves that shadow. The shadow then casts those purple lines on the ground. If they hit you, you die. So make sure you avoid them, and the other thing to avoid is the little clouds that he does. Don't walk into those because they stun you for 3 seconds. Alright, so he does a Blade Surge. He's casting the little clouds all the time, so he does a Blade Surge. Then the purple things on the ground will show up, so you have to dodge. You have to. Then he does another Blade Surge, and then he's going to do the AoE ability that does damage to everyone, Slicing Maelstrom, and you need to be prepared to heal that because it does a lot of damage, especially on Tyrannical. There it is. So what I try to do here is I try to have a Healing Rain running so that everybody takes 20% more healing from the Deluge. And then, because you know the script now, right? So it's a Blade Surge, purple things on the ground, another Blade Surge, and then he always does the Slicing Maelstrom. So I'm trying to precast my Healing Rain, and then once he starts casting, I'm basically already precasting my heals. In this case, I had to single target heal the Warlock because he was low, but other than that, precast your chain heals and be ready. If people are low, here I got stunned. You can dispel that, of course, if somebody else gets stunned, not me though. And then if you are falling behind on heals, you can actually pop a cooldown during the Swirling Maelstrom so that you catch up. So you can have Ascendance, you can have Ancestral Guidance, you can have the Spirit Link, and even Healing Tide is going to help a lot. Generally, if you are playing well and you're precasting your Healing Rain and your heals, especially if you have High Tide running, and in this case I run Downpour, you will basically have almost no trouble healing this boss. If you fall behind, that's when you need the cooldowns, or if somebody gets hit on the ground, or if people are not staying in range, right? All of those things could happen. But other than that, as you can see, the Downpour and a couple of chain heals are basically enough to heal through this boss. We don't have the Lust. It's not going to be up. I don't think so. But as long as you're not running like plus 20 something, right, where you definitely need cooldowns to heal through the Slicing Maelstrom, as long as you're aware of this fight, you should be fine to heal. I think I got behind here. I didn't have cooldowns, but I still managed to live, right? So as you can see, it's not that scary. You just need to be prepared. You need to know when the Slicing Maelstrom is coming, so you're prepared to heal, and then just dodge stuff on the ground, right? Sometimes, if you are the only range, you might be the one who has to bait the charges, but basically it's just a big circle on the ground that you've probably seen already. So just move to the side, wait a little bit for the purple lines to disappear, and then you can move back on top of the shade and then bait the next shade on top of the first one. This way, there's going to be less lines on the ground, and it's going to be easier for everyone to dodge. And of course, if somebody gets gets hit by the purple lines, then they just die, right? There's no living that. So hopefully everybody in your groups plays well, because otherwise this boss becomes very long and sometimes even unkillable. But it's a dance, right? Once you know the dance, this is pretty much scripted. So as you can see, this is not very scary. The second boss is harder to heal, especially on hierarchies, because the damage just ramps up there very, very quickly. All right, so that is basically a Court of Stars. Hopefully this video was helpful to you. I have videos for all the other Season 1 dungeons in Dragonflight with commentary on my channel, so feel free to check those out and subscribe. And, of course, happy healing, and I'll see you in the next one. You can see the healing breakdown right now of my spells, and I'll show the talents in just a second. I'll also have them linked in the description of this video. So take care. See you soon.